I'd like to welcome you at this time to session 20, where we will continue talking about the tarot. An even more distracting aspect of the tarot is the temptation to become involved with the use of the cards solely for the purpose of divination. Some may believe that divination is in fact the true purpose of the tarot cards, but the true purpose has already been stated here. In addition, it should also be said that using the tarot for divination tends to teach people to depend on the cards rather than teaching them to go within their own higher self, to their own higher self, where the information is received from a source that is more in keeping with a continuing forward-moving journey on the path, rather than getting stuck at a way station along that path. Using the tarot for divination also tends to have the connotation of wanting to know the blueprint of one's life ahead of time, rather than taking the higher road that's willing to accept life as it comes and to, quote, "let thy will be done," end quote. Additionally, there is the fact that it is not really an exact science at all, but is very subjective, and therefore the results of divination tend to be only as good as the skills, knowledge, and intuition of the person doing the reading. Finally, on the subject of using the tarot for the purpose of divination, it should also be said, for those who will insist that they must have a tarot reading so that they will know their future, that not everyone who seeks a tarot reading will be fortunate enough to find someone to read for them who is conscientious and caring about the subject of their reading as much as, or more so, than the amount that they will be paid for doing the reading. Once again, let this be a word to the wise. Remember that all of the various disciplines that are at this level of study, and we talked about 3, are designed through the use of symbols and other means to impress, educate, and raise the spiritual consciousness of those who seriously study them. The information and principles involved are given in order to reduce the number of errors made by the seeker, to accordingly reduce the number of incarnations necessary here without sacrificing the learning of needed lessons, and thereby to bring the student, the seeker, closer to the source, which by any name given is still God. Let us now consider the common theme in alchemy, the Kabbalah, the tarot, and other areas of study. As you may have already perceived, there is considerable commonality within these various schools of thought or disciplines that are used as vehicles for the study of esoteric teachings. That commonality is due to the fact that these different schools of thought all have the same ultimate purpose: to increase the spiritual understanding and thereby increase the spiritual development of sincere seekers. The ultimate goal is to bring about inner change for the seeker to the point that this seeker becomes more and more Christ-like. The number of incarnations needed by the seeker may be subsequently reduced if needed lessons and knowledge can be obtained through these studies and through other studies with similar purpose. Now, don't misunderstand. If all this sounds too, let's say, Western in its context, that's only because the speaker is from that background, although I am not a member of any organized religion. If the speaker were from the Middle East, or the Far East as they're called here, the information would likely be saying words to the same or a similar effect, because religions all over the world tend to have similar goals. Goals that include helping one to transform the inner and outer person to reach the highest spiritual state of which that person is capable. That is why teachers and avatars, God's messengers, have been sent to various societies and peoples throughout the ages. They have each been sent to oversee a time period and that generally approximates one age, which consists of about 2160 years. These statements are not made with the intention of offending anyone. It's simply a way of saying that the principles involved are universal and are not restricted to any one faith or belief, although many who follow those faiths and beliefs would not necessarily agree with that statement. In fact, some of them would disagree with it quite adamantly. I'm telling you what I understand. There may also be many who feel that it's impossible today to attain such a high spiritual state. If you have access to a Judeo-Christian Bible, however, you will be able to see otherwise. The universal Christ Spirit, who had created a state of oneness with the Master Jesus, taught that greater things than those which had been done would be done. This is stated in the Judeo-Christian Bible in the book of John 14:12, and the meaning is as follows: that which the Master Jesus had attained, and even greater things, others could and would attain also. It would be worthwhile to state here that contrary to the understanding of many followers of Christianity, this does not exclude Christhood. Most people who have read that biblical verse do not realize that such things are still possible today. Rare, exceedingly rare, but possible. The various schools and disciplines, both historical and modern, have tried and are still trying in a veiled way to impress upon the consciousness of sincere seekers that there is a higher way of life, a higher path, that it involves, as time goes by, and that's very important, as time goes by, more and more of service and less of self, and that significant spiritual advancement may be, can be, and should be sought and attained to whatever degree the person is capable in the incarnation in which they live. Not all persons are ready for this degree of work and study, however. Fortunately, there are many levels of endeavor along the path, some of which are of such a subtle nature that those who are there are unaware of the fact that there even is a path, or that they are on it. Many times such persons simply feel a sense of restlessness of the spirit that may cause them to be seeking answers at a time when they may be uncertain of even what the questions should be. The writings which tell us that we can only come to God through Christ are not telling us anything more than the fact that if we wish to complete the ultimate return to God, the source from which all comes, and do so in the most perfect way possible, then we must each do so through the Christ, by attaining a state of oneness with the universal Christ Spirit. In other words, through the attainment of Christhood. This does not mean that we must live the same life or do the same work as the Master Jesus or others before him. It does mean that when and if we prepare ourselves through right thinking, right speaking, and right living, in every way necessary, through many, perhaps almost countless incarnations, we can eventually become one with the universal Christ Spirit. We can become Christed. We can attain Christhood, just as the Master Jesus did. The alchemical search for the Philosopher's Stone is a search for Christhood. The journey up the Kabbalistic path from Malkuth to Tifereth is a search for Christhood. The search for spiritual development that takes the seeker along a path through the various principles taught by the symbols of the Torah is a search for Christhood. Even the search for the Holy Grail is a search for Christhood, a quest, so to speak. This search is described even in Dante's trilogy, The Divine Comedy, where the hero sees the souls wandering through the incarnation after incarnation on this earth, creating through wrong thinking, wrong speaking, and wrong living their own living hell, committing the same errors over and over, and causing themselves to relive the same hellish conditions again and again, until some of them eventually begin to think and see and realize that there must be a better way. When they finally begin to seek that better way, they find themselves beginning the climb that will bring them out of the inferno and set them on that long, difficult path spiritually upward from one level to another, mastering the human weaknesses of this life, one after the other, purging themselves of life's dross during their difficult climb through Purgatorio, until finally, after struggling through many incarnations, a few of the small number who started reach the mountaintop and are allowed to enter the garden, There they meet a still higher spiritual guide, Beatrice, who is later seen to be Mary, the mother of Jesus, but in truth is symbolic of the Holy Spirit, and who takes them by the hand and carries them to still higher levels of spiritual attainment as they continue to seek Christhood in their travels through Paradiso. Dante was inspired to write thus so that his readers might know the way, and when the proper time comes, for them to be able to find that way for themselves. This speaker found an interesting article in a newspaper several years ago. The article stated that a woman whose job it was to translate ancient texts had been terminated from her employment for, in effect, allowing feminist thinking to cause her to translate the person of the Holy Spirit in the feminine gender. The poor woman stated that she had merely translated the ancient text as it had been written many years ago. Of course, she and the ancient texts were correct. The Holy Spirit is feminine in nature, and it has always been so and will continue to be so. Neither my thinking nor anyone else's can change that. It may even be suspected by some that perhaps the Catholic Church uses Mary as such a prominent figure within the Catholic faith in order to symbolize in a very veiled way the feminine nature of the Holy Spirit. It should also be pointed out at this time that the Trinity in Christian teachings is not without parallel in other religious teachings. I suspect that there are a number of beliefs that incorporate a Father, a Mother, meaning the Holy Spirit, and a Son within their teachings. For example, the Egyptian teachings about the personalities of Osiris, Isis, and Horus are only one such example. You may know of others, as it has been written here previously and stated here previously. These truths are universal and are not restricted to any one belief, faith, or time period. If you now understand the idea that a great many people over a great many centuries have used a great many different methods to act as guideposts, to teach a few very important truths to those who seek to walk the path, for those who seek to walk the path on this journey through life, then enough has been said for now on that subject. I want to thank you for watching, and in session 21 we'll begin to consider ways to help you attain your goals, your personal goals for spiritual growth. I invite you to watch, and I thank you for watching this particular session. Thank you.